to Hayden Cooks. This is my home kitchen, and tonight I'm going to be making tacos for dinner, so I thought you might like to join me. So first thing I did is I got my body ready to get ready to cook. So I have short sleeves on. If I had long sleeves, I would have rolled them all the way up above my elbow. My hair is pulled back. My jewelry is off my hands. I don't have bracelets or watches on. And I washed my hands thoroughly. I got out the ingredients that I'm going to need. And then tonight we're gonna be making tacos. So the other day I cooked some pork in the crock pot. So this is the type of meat that I use. I'm not gonna take it out of the plastic bag. So this is called a butt roast from a pork, a pig. This is actually not from the pig's butt area though. It's actually a cut from its shoulder area. And you might also find something called a shoulder roast or a Boston butt roast. Any of those types of cuts will work. So this one here is 6 pounds, a little over 6 pounds, and it fit perfectly inside of my slow cooker. When you go to use your slow cooker, you want to make sure that you use the crock part, which is the insert of it. I put my meat inside of it, and my meat was thawed. And then I added about a half of a cup of liquid to it. So I just happen to use water. You can use beef broth, you could use chicken broth, you could use orange juice, a little lime juice in it, whatever sounds good to you. It's kind of like making carnitas, except I'm not cooking it in a bunch of oil. And then you put your crock inside with your meat in it, and then you put your lid on. And then I set mine on high heat. My crock, this slow cooker is also known as a crock pot, and sometimes I call it a crock pot. You can put it on low or you can put it on high. I put mine on high heat, and then I cooked it for about 6 to 7 hours until it was completely tender all the way through and wanted to fall apart. And I don't like to make the smells of what's coming out of my crock pot sometimes in my house. So I plugged this in out on my screen porch because I have an outdoor plug out there, and had it up on a little table where I plugged it in, and I let it cook outside throughout the day. And then I checked on it periodically. When it was finished, I took the crock pot out with my oven mitts and I set it on a hot pad to let it start to cool down. One of the mistakes that people make when they go to cook meats in a crock pot is as soon as it's tender, they'll take the meat out and immediately start eating. Well, the problem with that is the meat hasn't had time to rest, and when the meat rests, it takes all the juices that it released into the crock pot, and then as it's resting, the juices go and they suck right back up into that meat fiber. So that's how you want to have tender meat, is you have to let the meat rest. So I actually will cook this the day before that I need it, and then after it has cooled down a little bit, then I put it in my refrigerator in smaller containers. You can also take your crock out, of course, with your oven mitts, and put it in a water bath, an ice water bath. So you can plug up your sink, fill up your sink part way with some cold water, throw some ice in there, and set the actual crock part down in the water so the water will come up the sides to help this cool down. You can also pull the meat and stuff out of there, and then into different containers. And you'll notice how all the liquid, while it's hot, is all around the meat, kind of coming up near the top of it. But after it has cooled down, the meat gets sucked back, or the juices get sucked back into the meat. So you're not going to see a lot of liquid when it's done. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And I'm going to prep my area. So when you go to use a cutting board, you need to have something underneath of it so your cutting board doesn't move around on you when you're trying to cook. So in the classroom, we use paper towels, and we will take the paper towels, get them damp, and make sure that they are the length of the cutting board, and we lay them out flat and then put the cutting board on top. At my house, I don't like to waste paper towels, so I just take these here that you can put your pot holders down, and mine are rubber, silicone, and I'll put my cutting board on top of it. All right, so I'm going to heat up the meat later. So what I have already prepped here is I have a white onion, I have a lime, I have a jalapeno, and I have some cilantro. I have some salsa verde, and then I have some flour tortillas. You can also use corn tortillas. You can use whatever ingredients you want in your taco. It doesn't matter. This is just what I like to have when I make pork tacos. So later I'm going to be heating up my leftover pork meat, and we're going to put it on a baking sheet. Remember, a baking sheet has 4 sides. And then I'm going to broil the meat in the oven. So I'm going to separate out the little pieces, broil it so it gets a little bit crispy on the top of it as it's warming up the leftover meat. And that's what I'm going to use in the taco. All right, so let's see here. The first thing I want to do is I want to prep my onion. So this is already washed and dried. And as you remember me talking in class, I like to use flour sack towels when I use these for drying vegetables or fruits or drying dishes or whatever. And these are big towels. They're very thin. They don't leave lint on stuff, and they're excellent. They suck up lots of water. And I get these flour sack towels, F-L-O-U-R, flour sack towels. They're on the bottom shelf at Walmart, where Walmart sells their kitchen towels at, and they're super cheap. And these are great for cleaning your house or anything. So I washed all my items, I dried them, and now I'm going to prep an onion. So this white onion is kind of large. I'm not going to use the whole thing for the tacos. This is the stem end of the onion. This is the root end of the onion right here. And when I washed it, a lot of times the root end have a bunch of these little hairy fibers on there. So I ripped those all off because I don't like to get the little bits in my food and have to clean it later. So I have my cutting board here, and then we have our chef knife. And as you remember in class, this is your triangular blade knife. So when I go to use this chef knife, the blade is lower than my fingers. So that way I can get on top of it and I can chop, and I'm not going to cut my fingers at all. And I can cut fast with this if I want to, or I can go slow. It doesn't matter. So when I go to hold the chef knife correctly, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to grab the chef knife like this, slide my middle finger up to here, and then I'm going to pinch on this side. My thumb is on this side of the knife, and then on this side, my first finger is bent, and it's in this little groove right here of the knife, and I'm pressing, and it's kind of like riding a motorcycle, okay? If you're holding on to your handlebars of your bike or a motorcycle, it kind of feels like that, but instead you're holding on to your knife. My finger is bent and it's up. Never let your finger get down like that because you could cut off your fingertip. Keep all your other fingers and stuff out of the way when you're cutting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off the stem end of this white onion. Okay, so I'm going to lay it on its side, and I'm going to come in, and I'm keeping my fingers out of the way, and I'm going to cut off the stem end, and I'm pressing down, and I'm removing that. Okay, now I have a flat surface. Flat surface goes down. The root end is face up. Okay, and now right in the center of it, I'm going to put my palm on top of my knife. Okay, my fingers are still bent out of the way, and I'm going to cut straight through this root. Okay, I'm going to separate the two halves. And I'm going to work on this half right here. Now, the root end I want to keep on because this is what's going to hold my onion together as I go to chop. I'm going to now peel the onion. So I'm going to take off this outer layer that has skin and stuff. And this is one of my kitchen sinks right here. So I'm just going to drop this mess down in the sink. Okay, and I got little bits of skin on me. So I'm going to give this a little rinse in the sink. And then I'm going to pat it dry on my flour sack towel. Okay, now when I'm ready to cut the onion, I need to decide what kind of pieces of onion do I want on my taco. So I don't mind larger chunks, but you don't want to have a huge chunk of onion coming up into your mouth on the taco. So that's up to you. So I think I'm going to make pieces that are about this long, okay? So I'm going to have the root end away from me, and I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna make like a cut here and about a cut here. So I'm gonna not cut all the way through the root, so I'm gonna leave the root attached. So I'm gonna come in here, I'm gonna cut with the tip of the knife, my fingers are out of the way, and I'm gonna cut down, and now I'm gonna cut the other part right here and right here. So as you can see, I cut right there, and I left the root intact because that's holding my onion together so I don't have little pieces falling everywhere. Now I'm going to rotate the onion so the root end is away, and I'm going to start on the right side, and I'm going to make cuts. So I am kind of like slicing it into little pieces, okay? And I don't want to make them too thick, so I'm looking over my onion and I'm looking towards the right side as I go to make my cuts. All right, so right here, this is about enough onion that we will need for dinner tonight, and then you can just pull the little pieces apart like that. If you want your onion to be diced, then you just make more cuts going across, and then rotate and then chop. All right, so I'm gonna get this out of the way. Put this on my little plate over here. All right, get this onion out of here. All right, so next thing I want to do is I want to prep. Oh, one more thing. If your eyeballs are burning when you're cutting the onions, you need to go over to your freezer and then open the door of your freezer, stick your face inside the freezer, and then blink, 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 blink repeatedly, and it pulls the oils out of your eyes, okay? So that's a little tip for you, and don't forget to close the freezer door. All right, so here is my lime. Now, you can just cut it directly in half and half, you know, whatever you want to do to make little wedges to squirt onto your taco. But here's a tip some people don't know. The very center of the lime has like a little membrane and stuff. So what I'm going to do is when I go to cut, I'm going to rainbow. This is my rainbow, see it? I'm going to rainbow the lime, and I have the stem end on one side, and here's the little lump of the bottom of that lime. And when I go to cut, I'm not cutting in the direct center. I'm cutting just next to the center a little bit as I go to cut through the line. So again, I'm going from the top of the line towards the bottom of the line, just off center. So as I go to cut straight down, you can see that I left that membrane right there in the middle. So when I have this cut piece of lime here, it doesn't have that membrane, so it actually makes it easier to squeeze the lime and get the juice out of it. So now I'm going to take this cut side down so it doesn't wobble on me, and then I'm going to cut it into more wedges. So I'm going to rainbow over top and hold the sides of my lime together as I go to cut a wedge and another wedge. And 3 will be enough for dinner tonight. And then there's your little pieces that you can squeeze to put onto your taco. All right. So this is my fresh jalapeno. So I like to have jalapeno rings on my taco. You could chop them up farther. The thing you need to be careful with the jalapeno is most of the heat is in the pith area, which is the white part that holds the seeds and the seeds of the jalapeno. So I don't mind that. Some people don't like that part, and that's fine. You can always cut off the green parts off of it and then chop up from there. I'm just going to cut mine into rings. But you need to be careful because the jalapenos have oils in them, and those oils, when they get on your skin, they're going to stay there for a few hours no matter how many times you wash your hands. And then if you touch into your eyeballs or something like that, you're going to burn. So, and then when you burn, there's nothing you can do. Just keep blinking, 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 and then hopefully that burn will go away after a little while. So I have the stem end away from me. Remember, this was already washed. And I'm going to hold on to it here, take my chef knife, and I'm just going to cut it into little rings. So just make little slices. I like them really thin. Okay. All right. So that's that right there, little thin slices. Now, if you want yours chopped up and you want minced jalapeno, and remember, mince means itty bitty tiny little pieces, okay? I can hold my knife correctly with my thumb and my finger bent. Get off there. All right, and then I am going to put my palm on top, thumb is closed, palm on top of the knife. So the top of that knife is going about right here across my palm of my hand. And now I'm going to press down here. I'm using my shoulder, and I'm just going to chop back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I scoop it in a little pile, and then this is how you can just keep on mincing something if that's what you want to do, okay? Now, I'm not scared of jalapeno oil. I'll be careful. So I'm just going to get that out of my way. Next thing, is your cilantro. So when you buy cilantro at the grocery store, it comes in a bunch, and it's usually right next to the parsley. But if you see an Italian flat leaf parsley and you see cilantro, they both have flat leaves. So some people get them confused at the store. So make sure that you're reading your labels. You can also sniff it. Cilantro has a little bit of a citrusy, lemony scent when you squeeze the leaves, and it's delicious. Now, I love cilantro. I can eat a whole bowl of this stuff. Some people don't like it because some people have a gene that makes cilantro taste like soap to them. So I don't have that gene. I'm gonna rinse my fingers off a little bit. I don't have that gene, and I love cilantro, and it's very, very good for you. So you could take the cilantro. I like to rip the top of it off, leave those stems in the bunch, and then you need to rinse it really, really, really good because it has dirt and sand and stuff in there. We don't want any grit in our mouth when we go to eat our tacos. So you can take the cilantro and you can just pick off the little leaves. And of course, I dried it after I washed it with my flour sack towel. And these little pretty leaves are beautiful right on your taco, okay? You can also chop up the cilantro if you want with your chef knife, okay? So that's up to you what you like to do. All right, so that's enough right there for my tacos for later. All right, so I'm gonna get the meat pan ready, and I will be back in 1 second. All right, so I need to get my oven ready to heat up the meat because I'm going to be broiling it to make the pork a little bit crispy. So before you turn on your oven, you have to move the oven rack when you go to use the broiler. So I'm going to come up to my cold oven, and I'm going to open the door, and I need to move this rack up. So I'm going to slide it. And oven racks at the back of them have a little thing where it's bent up to help you so when you pull a rack out a little bit to get something off, it doesn't fly out of your oven. It helps to catch. So I'm going to move it up to the top rack because my baking sheet is short. It's only, half of an inch baking sheet. And then I'm going to close the oven. And I'm going to put it on broil. So I'm going to change my setting to broil, B-R-O-I-L, okay? And then my oven happens to have a low broil and a high broil setting. So I'm going to put it on the low broil because I think it's a little bit easier to keep track of it, make sure it doesn't burn. And I don't want to burn the meat at all. I want to eat the tacos. All right. So I got my leftover pork meat out of the refrigerator, and know that when you make the crock pot pork and you chill it overnight, what's going to happen is the fat that came off of the pork is going to rise to the surface, and it's going to be this thick layer of like white grease. So I took a spoon and I scooped off all of the grease, and then what you're going to find underneath is the meat. And then you're going to find it looks like kind of like super loose Jell-O, but it's not Jell-O. It's just the gelatin that came out of like the bones and stuff that were cooked in with the meat. So it is good for you. It's full of nutrition. If you can see that on the end of my fork, that's what it looks like. Yummy, yummy. But this will melt down and turn back into juice when it gets hot, okay? So, of course, you throw away the bone. So what I did is I took the meat out and I put pieces of it on here, and I used 2 forks, and then I kind of separated the little pieces of meat and I scattered them across my baking sheet. You need to make sure that you are using a metal baking sheet, not glass. Glass does not go underneath the broiler. Okay, it can crack. So the baking sheet, don't use a cookie sheet because cookie sheets, remember, only have 1 or 2 sides on them. The other sides are open and flat because your meat juices will flow off into your oven, and we don't want to do that. So make sure that you have sides on this. Do not put parchment paper underneath. Do not put wax paper underneath of it because the wax would melt and the parchment paper can catch on fire. So that would not be good. I like to put it just on this because I can clean this easily later. So I spread the meat pieces out all over the place to give it more surface area. That way when we go to put it underneath the broiler, the little edges of it and stuff, or the little flakes and pieces and pieces of fiber, they're gonna get like little crispy edges. And then after a little bit, I'm going to pull it out and then flip the meat over so I can crisp up the other side too, and then we'll be ready to eat soon. All right, so my broiler, it looks like it is ready. So let's go get it in the oven. All right, so you want to get your oven mitts on. Do not use a towel. Do not use your little square pot holders to try to put stuff in or out of the oven because you can burn yourself. So I have my pan right here ready to go in. I'm going to open the oven door all the way down. Remember, you don't want to open it partially. You try to put your stuff in and then you accidentally knock it with your body and then the door closes on the back of your arms and you get burned. So I'm going to open the door all the way down, keep my face out of it because hot air does come out. I'm using this with 2 hands. I'm standing directly in front of the oven as I go to put it in. Slide it in. Let me close the door. And this is one of the items that you don't just want to set a timer and walk away from. You need to be watching what's going on in there because when you use a broiler, your stuff can go from, ooh, I got cooked and I'm done, to I got burnt in just a few seconds. So you need to be watching this. So I'm going to be turning on my oven light, okay? And I'm going to hang out here right next to my oven and I'm not going to play on my phone. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to pay attention to that meat because I want to have dinner tonight and I want it to look good and taste good. So I will be back. Okay, it's time for me to flip the meat. So I have my hot pads, 2 of them down on my counter right here. Oven mitts are on. I'm going to open the door, keeping my face away from where I'm opening it because the hot air is going to come flying out. Woo! All right, pull the door all the way down. Carefully grab this. 2 hands, and I'm bringing out the meat. You can see, there it is. You can see how it's starting to crisp up on the top of it. And you can see that those gelatin parts, they've melted, so it's like juice, but it's also being evaporated a little bit from the hot oven. I'm gonna close this door, oven mitts off, and I'm gonna quickly flip this meat over. And the top side is nice and golden, but the underside still looks kind of, plain. So we want to make sure that we crisp up both sides because we are caramelizing this meat, making it crispy, which is going to make it delicious. All right, so I'm flipping it all over first. And then I'm going to spread it back out. Yummy. Okay, into a nice little single layer. Yep, there it is. All right, turn hers back down. And 2 hands, I'm gonna come over here, open this door all the way down to the bottom, get it back in, and close the door. And I'm gonna sit in front of it and watch it for a few more minutes until it's ready. Well, meat is out of the oven, and it's a good thing I was sitting there paying attention because once I flipped the meat, the second side only needed to cook about 2 more minutes. And then it started to smoke a little bit because as the juices dried up, some of the stuff was hitting the burner at the top because the top of the oven is where the broiler is at. And it started to smoke a little bit as some of the little edges start to get singed. But that's also a little bit of flavor. So I was able to get it out. If I was not paying attention, I would have ended up having a whole bunch of smoke. So you need to be careful and make sure that you're sitting in front of your broiler when you use it. So the oven is off, the meat is done. I am now going to assemble my tacos. So I am going to use this brand of flour tortillas. I like this brand because they're soft and they're fluffy. And they taste good to me. I do make homemade tortillas, but again, I don't have time for that today. So if you want to use corn tortillas, that's fine. I like to use corn tortillas, but I like to actually stop 2 when I make a taco because sometimes they fall apart a little easily. So I have my taco down here, And you can warm this up if you want in a dry skillet for a little bit, or pop it in your oven or whatever. I'm just gonna pull it right out of the package because I'm hungry and ready to go. I'm gonna take a little bit of this meat and put it down. A little bit more on there. All right, that looks good. Nice little crispy bits. All right, and now I want to, let me put my salsa verde on here, which is like a green salsa made with tomatillas. Now I also make my own. I grow tomatillas when I garden and then make my own salsa out of them. But for convenience, we're just gonna use jarred salsa today. So I'm gonna put some of that on there. I'm going to take some of my white onion and sprinkle that across. This gives good crunch. And I'm gonna take my jalapeno slices and put a few of those on here. And then I'm going to top with my cilantro. And then I'm gonna take one of these lime wedges and give it a good squeeze going all the way across to get that good lime juice on there. I love lime juice. I'm gonna use 2. So, yeah, here we go. Now, this is the type of taco I like to eat when I use pork, but you do you. If you want to have tomato, pico de gallo, or salsa, hot sauce, you know, whatever you want to do, that's fine. So anything will work with this. This is delicious. So let me see how it tastes. Yummy. Well, that was really good. Thanks for joining me.